we actually did, or we were training care providers go in and read the questions to the folks that needed that level of assistance and then answer the questions for the survey. And we got hundreds of respondents that way. And we could not count on putting a nice flashy internet ad saying take the US Trans Survey. We knew that the only time somebody may see that is when they're going to their provider and they see a sign that says take the US Trans Survey, and then being able to say, oh, do you need assistance doing that? We were there for that. And we had to put that extra work in. We have to build the systems that require that extra work. And to say that it's too costly or it's too hard is now already creating more isolation at a systemic level. So I really appreciate what you said there.
Yes, thank you. Well, thank all of y'all. This was amazing. And I guess we're ready for our last one.
Yes. Thank you, our panelists. That was absolutely, I really enjoyed that conversation. As a newish elder, maybe kind of going into elderhood, I'm not gonna claim it yet. I want to.
Jade, can you just ask them to put the survey up while you're.
All right, can we get the survey up one more time for any folks who didn't have an opportunity to do the survey? So we're gonna survey our day together, give the organizers a little
I'll see
bit
you all
of
weekend.
information about what you needed. In this session, which we enjoyed this session, just the impact. Please take time and do that work for them so they can make this bigger and better. Because we don't be here next year, we're gonna be here the year after next, and we'll be here for a long time. No, I don't know.
Oh, you can go by. I'm not taking a picture.
Oh, you see real quick? Yeah, that like on the front right, that's really good. Not this side. And I heard they're recording it, so hopefully we can get
Yeah. And I just saw the email. Email just came through. I just saw it.
what you see.
For sent.
You know, I didn't get it. You forwarded it to me.
You didn't get one?
No. Oh, yes. Coco, Tiamsai Enterprise Global Trans Task Force. Come on. Let's give them a round of applause. And hundreds of No, I got one. Oh, I got one. Yeah. Yeah, sounds. I got this. Yes, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah. We're gonna make it straight. Okay, don't worry, I told you.
All right, so good afternoon, everyone. How are you today?
Good.
Oh, finally, we come to the closing part of this, so I'm so excited. And I'm so happy to be here. I myself, my name is Nikki. I flew far away, almost a day from Bangkok, Thailand, to come to the States. So it took a long time, but I'm so happy to see all the city here. I'm so excited. And of course, with this, the topic that really touched my heart about the transcending borders, global justice, innovation, and economic power. Because I actually represent one of the many, transgender million people who got job application rejection because of my gender identity rather than about identity. So I know how hard it is when you don't have access to economic empowerment with that. So, but well, today will not be my story alone. So we have all the wonderful, amazing panelists will be here, just walking from different paths of life, and I know with the expertise and that one, perspective and lived experience would really bring the value to the time. Thank you very much for coming here. Thank you very much for joining our National Trans Gender Summit here. So first of all, I would like all of you to introduce yourself, who you are, what you do. Please. Thank you. You can start first.
All right, hi y'all. My name is Emma Curtis. I am the councilwoman for Lexington's 4th District, right in the heart of Central Kentucky. I was elected this past November and am the first openly trans lawmaker in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And I'm really thrilled to be here with y'all today.
Yes, Jesse Caballero, Chief of Pronouns. I am the Director of Voting and Elections for Advocates for Gender Equality. I'm also the Vice President of the Transgender American Veteran Association, and I also serve as the Policy Committee Chair for the LGBTQIA+ Commission for the state of Maryland. So I think that's enough there.
Thank you.
All right, hello friends. My name is Belinda Drake and I use she, her pronouns. I have the privilege of serving as the Executive Director for Trans Solutions Research and Resource Center in Indianapolis, Indiana. Our founder is actually Marissa Miller, so super excited to just follow behind her in her lead. But I also serve as an appointed official in the city of Indianapolis on the Board of Business and Neighborhood Services. So very excited to be here. Thank you.
Linda, next.
Hi everyone. Hi everyone, my name is Coco. Coco Tianzai. I came from Thailand. The same day that I came with Vicky. I'm transgender woman. I go by she and her. I am a co-founder of Transparent Thailand. So basically Transparent Thailand is going to be happening right after this. We're going to be flying back to Bangkok and host our second Transparent Thailand, which is, the very historical move for transgender people in our country, which I will elaborate further in my Q&A. Apart from that, I am also the head of communications for the pharmaceutical company based in Bangkok, Thailand.
Thank you, Coco, for signing us as well. Next.
Yes, my name is Chris Travers. I use he, him pronouns. I'm with the Transgender Law Center. I'm the national policy organizer, and I'm very happy to be with you all here today. I'm from Dayton, Ohio, so I'm loving to see some Midwest energy in here. But yeah, that's it.
And that's Chris.
Hi everyone, my name is Lily E. Rude. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm proud to be the founder and executive president of the National Transgender Leadership Council. We launched just a few months ago, so if you haven't heard of us, check out transleadership.org. Great to be here with you all.
Thank you very much, Lily. All right, so you see, we have a mix of panelists who come from different part of the world, and of course, we would love to hear from all of you at first, the first question, because we really want to know for now, as we are aware that the political, social, political, and even economic climate across the world are still in a very challenging stage. So, how does the global landscape for trans rights compare to the US? And what can we learn from our international experience? I think any of you could really elaborate on that, your perspective about trans rights on a global landscape. I'm going to go first.
I guess I can start off, and I'll talk from as a U.S. veteran as well as former service members, including trans service members who are still in the military, at least for another week or so. And I wanted to bring this topic up because what we are seeing in the United States is looking at the rest of the world saying, oh, if trans people can't serve in the United States military, maybe trans people don't need rights in my country as well. And this has a completely horrifying cascading effect where we are, many trans people are translators in the military. There are many trans people who have been out doing good humanitarian work. And now, as we are seeing the US federal government take away the dignity of even the service members and also people who work with USID and all of the humanitarian work that we do and trying to take away from trans people, we are essentially giving a green light to other nations that are trying to look for any excuse possible to not provide the human dignity of trans people in their own borders. So it's very scary to see that this is the example that the United States is sending abroad.
Thank you very much. Because I'm from China, even I also know, and a lot of organizations like trans-led organizations that work on the humanitarian basis as well. So we got affected from that presidency shift that I was saying. Thank you very much for sharing this thing. So anyone else would like to add some perspectives?
Yeah, I feel like it's important to recognize that there's other countries that are doing gender recognitions and anti-discrimination laws and all these things that be protected in other countries. And when we look at that comparatively to the U.S., a lot of our rights are varied by states, right? Which is an issue and a problem, but also to look at the landscape further, the U.S. is pushing a very right-wing, white Christian nationalist agenda. And this is providing a blueprint to other countries who have not had transphobia or homophobia or historically around anti-Blackness and things like that. These are interventions that are happening. And so when we look at how we're learning from our international siblings and how we're showing up, we have to understand what we're doing here is always going to impact our international community. And that's why these fights here are so important, so we can show up for them the way that we need to.
That's very important. So anyone would like to add more?
I can go next then. Speaking from the perspective of the global south and transgender from Thailand and the gender scholar myself as gender studies background, I think that what I see from the US landscape is that the US trans movement is very politicized. And that right now with the current situation, the status quo is that we're being attacked very, very openly. But what I see here is also a very strong resistance, strong community and solidarity of the community that want to really fight against those wrong discourses, right? And that's what I really admire. People in the US, trans in the US, fighting for that. And I think that's will keep hope. And as you said, it's a ripple effect where it sends a message to people across different continents as well. And I can see that when I come to DC for the first time in my life. Actually, first time in my life in the US too. Thank you very much. And that's what I see as a US landscape, but what I see as a Thai trans woman is that I think there's a lot of misconception when it comes to acceptance in Southeast Asia, in Asia, or even in Thailand in particular, where people often romanticize us as, a land, a heaven and paradise for transgender. When in fact, Chris just mentioned recently that some countries, including Thailand, still far behind in terms of legal protection. So yes, I think that people will not punch you or attack you on the street or attack you in terms of public policy in public space. But at the same time, I think tolerance it's just there, but it's not acceptance. As Nikki mentioned, and I also experienced it firsthand myself, I tried so hard to get into the corporate in my 30s. I'm now 32. But during my 20s, I tried really hard to get in. I got rejected over 200 applications I tried. I went to the top school in Thailand, yet no one accepted me because of my gender identity. And I think that's a harsh reality. So basically, we're facing a lot of economic exclusion in a sense, where we have to be forced and put by structural design to be in shadow economies, I would say. And I think that's the situation of standing. So what I think we can learn is that number one, we see that yes, US movement, trans movement in US, and their strong resistance is very admirable. And I thank everyone for doing that. And secondly, from the global south, what other people can learn is that romanticization of trans in the global south is also something that we need to unlearn and relearn again. And that also, I believe that tolerance in the society, but without political will, it's just nothing but romanticization. Thank you.
That's why we need the global south voice like you to come here to share, to our type of transition, because we can, you never know, because we have come from, different part of the world, we consume the news and we're just trying to, perceive things that might not be able to learn that well. So thank you very much, Coco, for sharing. So, did you want to add something more on these points?
Yeah, so as we think about the United States movement for trans justice and global movements for trans justice and how they intersect, we have to name the ways in which we as US-based organizations, speaking for myself as the leader of a US national organization, need to be standing up to show how our movement is interconnected and intersectional, because the fact is that the United States state violence that is occurring is affecting people across the globe in ways that folks have spoken to here. And another way I want to name this is the Brazilian representative, Erica Hilton, is the first Black trans woman in the Congress of Brazil, and she recently experienced the US state violence that is occurring through a visa modification. Her gender was improperly listed on her visa intentionally. And so when we have trans leaders from all over the world coming to the United States and joining with us in what should be an interconnected movement, but then we are enacting policies as a country that are perpetrating violence, we need to be even more strong in naming that interconnected and intersectional nature of the movement, because too often I hear folks talking about the United States as the home of trans elected officials and the increase in representation here without talking about folks like Erica Hilton in Brazil, like Carla Antonelli in Spain. And we need to really continue to create that unity so that we can all resist the state violence together.
That's true. Couldn't agree more. Thank you very much.
Yes, when I think about the intersection between the United States and the rest of the world, I'm coming at it from a very localized perspective in Kentucky, having done work on gender-affirming care bans and anti-trans policy at the state level in Kentucky. And the thing that I found utterly fascinating was these very conservative Republican legislators who make up a supermajority in both chambers of our state legislature were all of a sudden talking about how wise, in their words, liberal European countries were to restrict trans care. And now, of course, they're misrepresenting studies, but what happens across the world impacts what happens in the US, which impacts what happens across the world, which impacts what happens in the US. it is completely intersectional in that sense. And, you know, I remember having to explain to Democratic senators and representatives in Kentucky what turf Twitter meant. They weren't familiar with the term trans exclusionary radical feminist. They didn't understand what had gone on in the UK with the CAS review. They didn't understand why all of a sudden their colleagues were talking about this one Swedish study. And I think that we here in the US are now amplifying a message that has existed in other countries. It's not just the other way around. It's not just this. There's always somewhere else in the world that we can look and find a precedent for what we're experiencing here, just as we can look somewhere else in the world and find hope for a potential better future or another way of doing things.
Thank you. Yeah.
I would say that in Indiana specifically, unfortunately, trans rights and specifically trans youth rights continue to be under attack. For example, trans youth who simply would love to play sports and be included are being excluded because of their gender identity. And then in Indiana, we unfortunately follow suit with what happens at the national level. And so some of you may know that there is an upcoming case, the Scrimeti case, that will have huge implications on what happens not only in the state of Indiana, but throughout the entire country of the USA, which I believe will then trip into an international ban or discussion of some sort. So while Indiana is not a big state, it is a state that follows what happens at the national level and ultimately impacts a lot of our trans and non-binary youth in our state.
Well, thank you very much. This is the first question, and you know what I hear from the folks is, well, trans issues are still, we are still faced challenges, either in structural, culture, even legal, or even professional careers. If you are, facing the challenge, and even, from different parts of the world, some countries, like for example, Asia that you mentioned, we don't really have that gender legal recognition that really protect trans life. While some countries that might seem progress before, but now, still facing what is happening here. So we all witness with this thing, with our own lived experience, and the folks who share this thing. It's really amazing to know how and see how you all share the leadership and power and energy with us today. Thank you very much, but not yet end. So, go for the next question. So, we would like to touch more on about the barriers that you see the trans immigrants face when seeking safety, healthcare, and opportunity. Who would like to touch on this perspective? Trans immigrants. Anyone would like to? Feel free to do so, no matter what. Yes, Lily, you do.
I can go ahead. I just wanted to share again, just emphasizing the importance of intersectional frameworks in our work in the US. I was speaking with a leader of an educational organization in the education sector, and they were telling me how they attend these regular meetings of leaders in their sector focused on protecting immigrants in education. But they had never heard anyone bring up the specific experiences of trans immigrants. And then they were also part of a group that was talking about trans rights, but that group wasn't talking about trans immigrants either. And so when we're hearing from leaders across different spaces and sectors that these intersections are not being brought together, it's our responsibility to make sure that that framework is being implemented. And this has been, a call that has been coming to us for so many decades. I'm lucky to attend Mount Holyoke College, where Barbara Smith was one of the founders of the Combahee River Collective and spoke about the ways in which oppressions intersect and overlap so many years ago, and we're still not listening and still failing our communities. And so that is, one of the things that we need to do as an action and a solution to support our trans immigrant communities.
That's the matter of leaderships. We're playing important and crucial roles in, design a policy that we can really, give a better, flexible healthcare opportunities. Anyone else want to share about this?
I'll jump in really quick and talk about how the fact is with the immigration policies that are happening, they will affect all immigrants as well. And we have to remember that they will target our trans members, they'll target the folks with the darkest skin, right? They're going to try to target in that way. But we have to remember that these laws are designed to take the rights of all of us. And this is what I mean. So you were talking about a visa for a Brazilian elected official being marked with the wrong gender marker. Well, that leads to the ability for the government to affect everybody's gender markers. It opens up the door, and not just gender markers, but just the visa process as a whole. And what they do is they use marginalized populations to pry open an opening for them to then be more dramatic when their actual goal is to remove all immigrants that they don't feel look like them. We also have to acknowledge the fact that there was a large contingency of immigrants that would come to America to serve in the military. And I served with many immigrants that were in the military. They were from Colombia, they were from the Dominican Republic, they were all over, and they were proud to serve this country. And then I see these same people getting deported after they just served. And so we are weakening ourselves when we do this type of policy. We are getting rid of good, hardworking people that want to do nothing more but raise a family, build a life, and actually continue to contribute to the great American experiment. But now we are at a point where we are kicking these folks out and scaring folks from coming in. And they're going to use trans immigrants as a big issue. I'm sure all of us saw it on the election. They want to give transgender surgeries to immigrants that are in prison. And it's like they use that language to oppress us all. And if we do not stand up for our most marginalized among us, which are the trans immigrants of color in particular, then we are all going to lose our rights. Because this is just the open door that they have pried open, and if we let it stay open, we're all going through it. And it's not going to be great.
Thank you very much. And anyone else would like to chat about? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's also really important, and to echo, we are on stolen land. No one here can be deported on stolen land because it's not their land in the first place, right? And so I think it's always important to recognize that, and I'm really happy that you were talking about intersectional approaches and then also uplifting the different understandings of the disproportionate race that trans folks who are Black and brown are going to face when it pertains to immigration and seeking safety and opportunity. When we're looking at the borders and we're looking at what's happening in detention centers, right? Black and brown trans people, especially femmes, depending on their HIV status, depending on their ethnic group and where they're coming from, they are going to be disproportionately impacted. And the violence that is happening is horrible, right? And so when you think about the barriers that come with that, that means when they're entering this country, they're already experiencing employment discrimination, which means that you're going to lead to, you're not going to have housing, you're going to have unaffordable housing, which means that you can't access healthcare, right? So these all, like to your point, it's all intersectional, and it's going to impact everyone. And it matters what part of the chopping block that you're on, but you're still on the chopping block. So.
Yes, I can agree on that. It's like need to work on visa application. We need to work on visa application coming to the US or to many countries in the world. And I think that first and foremost, documentation itself is already difficult, but it's more difficult under this situation, I believe. And not to mention about the emotional damage that we are foreseeing before entering the territory of the country. I think that's very scary in a way because it's very unpredictable. Despite the fact that we already have the visa granted, but that could be any reasons for us, to be deported, right? Or, to kick us out, whatever it is. And I think let's also not forget that apart from, legislative perspective, I think that for many immigrations, coming to or relocating or immigrating to different countries comes with economic thinking as well. Like you mentioned, when we're here, it was a reason for us. Maybe it's economic reason, educational reason, whatever it is. But with such circumstance, we're already forced to be excluded economically and legally in the first place, meaning that this is going to be extraction of capitalists. We're being exploited easier. I think we are, as I said, being forced, not by choice, by structural design of the system. We are not been doing the work that sometimes we volunteer, but not necessarily. For example, sex worker, for example, low paid job or whatever it is, just to survive, rather than to make a great living out of the choice that we really want to pursue. So I think that this is what we really need to keep in mind, and let's protect our immigration people.
Thank you very much. Who else would like to say?
I mean, just to keep it really simple, that you can't fight for immigrants' rights without fighting for trans rights. You can't fight for trans rights without fighting for immigrants' rights. If they can do anything that they can do to one group of us, they can do to any and all of us that they don't like. And it really is that simple. So we just can't let ourselves be fractured in that way. And we have to make sure that we're holding space and giving voice to everybody who's had those experiences.
I would like to just add and just go back a little further. Over-policing of Black and brown people has always been a problem in this country. And then more specifically to our immigrants, trans women, Black and brown men as well. And so now it appears that the government has just given permission to over-police a different population of people that would always ultimately impact the most marginalized, which is trans women in this country. So just wanted to say that.
Thank you very much. So we see now how even just in immigrant issues also, as like an intersect in different, path of life. Trans people are in every part of the society, and of course, not just about the country, but also the region, also the global perspective we were talking about as well. So we have one of the untapped human capital that I think we really need, rather than suppress, we should support people to really unlock the potential to become who they are and liberate their rights to have the access to resources, to do whatever one as a human being can do in order to make sure they can live and they can stand on their feet and then they can really contribute something back to the country that they're living in. I think that's the point we're trying to clarify here. Thank you very much. So according to the time, so I need to come to the last question. And I know we have been talking for a lot about the challenges in very significant perspective. So for now, we'd love to hear from all of you. So what would be the solution on how we could build the global coalitions that center trans economy, justice, and power? Anyone would like to go first?
I can start.
Of course, sure.
Yeah, so, I think we've been talking a lot about coalitions today. That's a key word, But I think, in just a little bit of conversation that we just had up here, we were naming a lot of different things that look intersectional when we think about how we're building relationships with people. And so that's economic justice, that's climate justice, that's making sure people have access to affordable healthcare, that's making sure that the larger national orgs are showing up for the direct service organizations, for the people who are local on the ground, the frontliners, the advocates, the leaders, that we are taking notes and understanding from their leadership and their vision. And I think that's a part of being a coalition, It's you're empowering and you're lifting voices and being in connection with people, and that takes relationship building always at the core, and having care being our legacy. At TLC, we always want to make sure that we are centering those voices, and I think when it comes to a global scale, that's about what we should be doing as well.
Yes.
I'll add to that. I think there are a few things that must happen in order for coalitions to work, to be expansive and to be sustaining. Number one, coalitions must include the people that you are looking to impact. And I know as leaders, sometimes that requires us to work longer hours, send out additional invites, but the coalition must include the people you are attempting to impact. And number two, in order for a coalition to be sustained, the economic power, meaning the money, must be given to those at all levels at the organization. Very grateful that our founder, Marissa Miller, has placed trans solutions on a global scale. But we know that the funding still needs to trickle its way down to those in Indiana. And then third is policy. While we're at the table, building next steps, strategy, developing funding strategies, we also have to make sure that we have policy makers and decision makers at the table, so that anything that we come up with, any solution that we develop, then becomes law, because that's how we actually move the needle forward. Those are my 3 things.
Thank you very much, Melinda. Next.
I think when it comes to global coalition, for me, I think we really need to stop calling people people with color or whatever, just because we think that we want the quota of diversity and representation to begin with. And I think that is still happening, even in the space of, trans, in pride or whatever it is. I think we need to really come to an actual reflection that the real coalition is not about me saying you said me, but it's about, we doing it equally as partner. Yes, I think that pretty much we need respect. I speak this from the first-hand experience, not only as the private sector worker, but before that, I also was a consultant for the Asian Foundation as well on the NGO sector. So pretty much I understand the landscape where sometimes the complexity of funding is centered around the global north, pretty much. The decision making is being made far away, 10,000 miles, where they don't hear the pain and understand the need of the community. So I think that pretty much this is what we need to restructure, understanding and using a real intersectional framework to begin with. And I think that's very important for NGO or CSO. Second, I would say for private sector itself as well, when it comes to coalition, is that despite the narrative discourse that's happening in the US right now, that also forced the policy of the private sector to abandon DEI or whatsoever it is. I think that we also need to stand the ground. I think the goals also need to learn and realize that what we do is not just a trend from the US. And never, diverse inclusion was never a trend to begin with. That is a system to be built. So I think, even if you're in the capitalism and you realize that it is bad, but if you need to survive at the end of it, right? The government would also need to take into consideration that excluding trans people into the workforce wouldn't help them achieving anything. They need smart, talented, trans people working in the system, and that is when they can achieve the goal. So if the private sectors become smarter, just a little bit more, I think that's how, I would stand and how we stand the ground. Thank you very much.
So surprised, thank you very much, Coco. And I think the points really linked together, because again, if you want the systemic change, so we need to get the people who get the most affected to be part of that decision-making table and do the policy that really cater to what we need, right? And then we have that, policy logic. So thank you. Next.
So I'm gonna take this route. Right now, our systems in the United States are so American-centric that it is so difficult for an organization to even go outside of its borders to talk to another organization because of tax codes and everything. Why is it that we can find a McDonald's in every country in this country, right, the world, but we can't find a queer center in every center of the world? Like, this is a structural issue that is designed to, these borders have closed us off in a way that we can no longer communicate in a way that isn't some international conference where we all meet once a year and then we are all talking about things and we all take them back to our homelands and then we wait till the next international conference before we ever speak to each other again. We have to break down the systems that are breaking us apart. These systems that have separated us is the major systemic issue. So if we're talking about solutions, we have to be more willing to travel to the other locations and actually build organizations in other locations. We have to be much more proactive instead of everybody, and I'm going to call us out as Americans. We just expect everybody to just show up over here and talk about how great we are and how good we're doing things, and now you do it over there, when the rest of the world is saying, you don't even let trans people in the military anymore. You are deporting people to El Salvador, to a country that these people don't even originate from. Why should we come and listen to you when you can't even get your house in order? So we have to rethink how we talk about coalition building. We have to let Brazilian lawmakers, Peruvian lawmakers that are doing the work as representatives of their nation as trans people of color, when we can barely even have a handful of folks in the United States, and we have way more elected positions by a factor of 10 probably in most of these places. So we have to break it down. We have to rethink how we're going to be able to fight this fight and think about global coalition as what it's meant to be. Global coalition, not America saying, oh, we're going to do this thing for you. We have to change that because America has failed at doing that human right activism that we all prided ourselves for.
Yes.
So that's what we have to do. And we're not going to find solutions until we break down the systems that divide us.
Very much. So next we need to.
All that, but so I'll say this. When we're talking about economic power in this context, it's not strictly hypothetical for me. I'm going to brag on my city a little bit. If you look at the numbers in Lexington, Kentucky, you'll see that as our immigrant population has grown, as our trans and LGBTQ population has grown, our economy has grown too. Having a safe, welcoming, and inclusive city, even in a sea of red in Kentucky, it does wonders for the private sector. It does build economic power, and we're able to do so in a way where, representation in elected office does matter. I'm a trans elected official in the city of Lexington. Our vice mayor is a Chinese immigrant, and that representation leads to wealth building. It leads to economic power for those marginalized groups. And so when we are talking about this, we have actual examples in the United States of why these things matter, why these things are beneficial to everyone. And, the Commonwealth of Kentucky has had a war on DEI as well. And in the city of Lexington, we had a proposal from our mayor's office to eliminate our DEI officer, and we shot it down. We killed it. We're doing it anyway. And we just need to have the chutzpah to say that we're going to actually live our values, that we're not going to just get up and say something that's flashy, but we're going to actually put that into practice. And that happens both in the economic sector and it happens in the public sector. I get to walk down the street and go to work next to a banner that says immigrants and refugees are welcome here, hanging from one of the biggest buildings in our city. And it's just a block away from a mural of Sweet Evening Breeze, a trans woman in Lexington who had an outsized impact on our community. And these are all things that populate our city. They make us better. And when we talk about building power, it is in every sector.
Yes, it's good. Thank you very much. Maybe the last word. Yes, please. You have. Yeah, your turn. What did you hear from me? Yes, for sure.
Okay. Speaking of living our values and building coalitions, I so appreciate Chris when you spoke to doing this work on stolen land and doing this work in the context that we're doing it in and being honest about that context and speaking about the hard topics. At the NTLC, we have a values statement that names our belief in land back, that names our belief in decolonial collective liberation, that speaks about Palestine. And these are not things that we do because it is easy or because it is strategic even, but because if we're going to build coalitions, we have to build community, and we have to be open with each other about our values and do this work in a way that is grounded in our values in order to build a truly intersectional movement.
All right, thank you very much. All of you, it's very amazing. Give me a applause. Thank you, very warm heat when it comes to the conversation. And really love it up. It's very amazing. So for now, I put it here to you. So one question from the audience. We would like to ask all of these amazing panelists, just we have some time, we are limited, so it's one question, please. We would like to hear anything, challenge more panelists.
Don't all get on.
All right, so thank you very much again.
Oh, we ready to take a picture? Yeah. Give it up for our international panel,
We are so excited to be here and to be in year 5. And I want to tell you that I thank you for being here. I love you guys. We will march. When I say trash, you say power. Trash, 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 trash.
I am a revolutionary. I am a revolutionary.